From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornoski. So glad to be with you once again. And it's great to have this time to unpack the news like we always do. You and I together, thinking through these things like nobody else does. We're not guided by toxic groupthink or tribalism. We're in the search of the truth. We want beauty. We want nonviolence. We want peace. We want prosperity. We want win-win solutions. And that's why we protect the principle of personhood as best as we can. Humans that we are, fallen that we are, we do the best we can to advance the principles of personhood. And I want to read from this upcoming piece we're going to have on our website, aneighborschoice.com. Just read some quotes from it. It's called Berdyaev versus Slavery. And that's in reference to the author, Nikolai Berdyaev, who was a Russian thinker and critic of ideology in the modern totalitarian type systems that we have today. He battled the communist dictators in his own time, but he had some great insights. And and the article, which will be coming up very shortly on aneighborschoice.com by Surat Dasgupta, says man is a riddle in the world, and it may be the greatest riddle. Man is a riddle not because he is an animal, not because he is a social being, not as a part of nature and society. It is as a person that he is a riddle. Just that precisely. It is because he possesses personality. And that's a quote from Nikolai Berdyaev from his book, Slavery and Freedom. And I'll just read a few quotes from the upcoming article because I thought it's a great piece in keeping with what we talk about on the show. On the concept of the state, Berdyaev writes that, quote, the state always repeats the word of Caiaphas, the high priest. It is the state's confession of faith. The words of Caiaphas, of course, are, it is better for us that one man should die for the people than that the whole nation should perish. That which has been considered immoral for a person, Berdyaev continues, has been considered entirely moral for the state. And that's something I've talked about a lot on this program. I've talked about that in a way that is, able to touch on various issues in the news, but it's something that it's like a cheat sheet. Once you understand this principle of personhood, then understanding where you fall on the issues is a little cleaner and simple. And that is the lie that just because the state says they can do it doesn't make it moral. Just because other people say it's okay to steal from your neighbor who has more, it doesn't make it moral if other people vote for somebody to do that on your behalf. And that's something that comes from Christianity, not libertarianism. People try to say that's a libertarian. No, Berdyaev is not a libertarian. He's a Christian thinker, a literary author. And, it's just interesting to see how we kind of debase these things and try to squeeze them into, that's called Christianity, my friend. There's no ism you need. That's just what it means to imitate Jesus, is you respect people's personhood. In the cultural and ideal tendencies of our epoch, dehumanization moves in two directions, toward naturalism and towards technicism. Man is subject either to cosmic forces or to technical civilization. It is not enough to say that he subjects himself. He is dissolved and disappears, either in cosmic life, and that's kind of reflective of the materialistic, atomistic view of the scientism of people who try to say that we're just cosmic stardust, so we're just part of this cosmic stardust, atoms colliding together, and what is called consciousness is just an illusion that we try to make sense of, but it's only an illusion. There's no real thing there. It's nothing but an illusion manifested by atoms colliding together and creating certain effects that we perceive to be something greater than what are really going on. Or we are always obsessed with almighty techniques. Man takes it upon himself the image either of nature or of the machine. But in either case, he loses his own image and is dissolved into his component elements. That's what we see today in modern medicine. If you have a disease, they say cut it out, chop it, burn it. If you have mental disorder, they say we'll put this chemical in you to reduce that chemical or that process from happening in your brain. They don't think about holistic stuff. They think about you as a machine, like your tire's flat. Okay, change the tire. They treat human beings like machines. You're low energy, change the batteries. They don't think about holistic body and soul intertwined together. And they don't understand. That's why they have, when you treat man like a machine, then you have a situation where 90-year-olds are locked in their homes or locked in nursing homes with geniuses like Andrew Cuomo shoving in COVID-19 infected people around them and then getting Emmys for that performance. But you have 90-year-olds being stuck without any companionship, without being able to be hugged. Now, they don't know what medicine is. What is the definition of health? Quality of life is part of health. Having some kind of technical definition of, well, they're still breathing and a pulse, therefore they're alive, therefore I have advanced health for that person. No, that's a technical, machine-like view of human beings. That you just look and see, can I keep the pulse going? Can I keep that? That's all I care about, like it's a robot, like it's a cattle. Rather than saying, wait a second, how do you get to define what is life for a human being? You're telling me that you can decree that a person who's 90 years old is resigned to have to be stuck in permanent isolation till they die year after year, rather than hug their children? How do we get to define who their life is, what their life is all about? You're going to decree as a society that they can't hug anybody? They have to stay alive because of some technical definition, some machine interpretation of the human body? That's what we're dealing with here. But Berdyaev says, man as a whole being, as a creature, centered within himself, disappears. He ceases to be a being with a spiritual center, retaining his inner continuity and his unity. With the advent of the Industrial Revolution, we see human persons turning into mechanized units, disposable flesh and blood, ready to be exploited by the dominating class. Man turns into a domesticated beast, ready to plow the concrete fields of the modern landscape, his uniqueness and worth all but forgotten. Berdyaev's problem with violent revolutions can be seen in the fact that they are born from the envy of the bourgeoisie spirit rather than transcending it. Socialism and communism, Berdyaev says, may give effect to a just and equitable distribution of the bourgeoisie spirit. Of course, Berdyaev has no desire to perpetuate the bourgeoisie mentality of pride and aloofness simply because it could not be reconciled with his Christian worldview. He writes, at one time in Egypt, the dignity of immortality was attributed only to the king. All the rest of the people were mortal. In Greece, to begin with, only gods or demigods or heroes and supermen were regarded as immortal. The people were mortal. Christianity alone has recognized all men worthy of immortality. That is to say, it makes the idea of immortality absolutely democratic. Christianity has overthrown the principles of Greco-Roman culture, and in so doing, has affirmed the dignity of every man, of his sonship to God. It has affirmed the image of God in every man, and Christianity alone is able to unite democracy, the equality of man in the sight of God, with the aristocratic principle of personality, the spiritual equality of persons, which is not dependent upon society and the masses. That's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the right to have freedom, and with freedom to do great virtuous acts of self-sacrifice and creativity. And that's not what we have pushed on us every day from the media. We have a society that wants to be sterile, bureaucratic, scared, fearful, arrogant, deluded, ignorant, and unwilling to taste the freedom that is our birthright. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. We'll take a break and return in just a moment after these short messages. A Neighbor's Choice is back. I'm David Gornoski, your host, and I want to go back to where we started when we started this episode, when I was talking about Nikolai Berdyaev and his comments on slavery, because I want to wrap it back up to that. It's all about the big picture here on this program. In this upcoming article that we'll have on our website by Surat Dasgupta, aneighborschoice.com, you'll find it there, aneighborschoice.com. The article says, what liberates man from slavery? Berdyaev's answer is a call to true aristocracy, namely one that ascends beyond the impersonal, the herd, and descends to those who are suffering and abandoned. You know who's abandoned right now and suffering? People who are abandoned in Luddite political forced isolation in nursing homes, eating horrible nutrition. Many of them. The article says the principal mark of true aristocracy is not exaltation but self-sacrifice, which are derived from inward riches, a readiness to descend, inability to feel resentment. True aristocracy, according to Berdyaev, manifests in creativity, not of the vain kind, but towards the betterment of one's own neighbor. Great creative men, Berdyaev writes, have always thought of themselves as called to service. They have a universal mission. Not only is creativeness the act of love towards fellow man, but it also manifests God's energy in his creation. Creativeness is liberation from slavery. Man is free when he finds himself in a state of creative activity. Creativeness leads to ecstasy of the moment. The products of creativeness are within time, but the creative act itself lies outside of time. So that's just some excerpts. You can look forward to reading the full article on aneighborschoice.com. But these points are very good, and they resonate with what we say a lot. It's amazing. So many things Berdyaev says, I have said, and I've never read any of his content until recently. And it just shows you that the truth, you can find it many paths up the mountain to get to the truth. And it's something we need to think about, because I talk all the time about rolling up our sleeves. That's about that creativity, the creativeness. That's your calling as a human being. The rolling up your sleeves, right? And then you work. And in your work and in your craft, you have those moments of pure ecstasy, of joy in the creative process. And yes, there is the value of what you produce as an end result, as a product or an art or a service. But ultimately, it's that actual creative aha moment, whether you're whatever your craft is or your art is or your technology that you're working on is, it's that aha that is what we're all about. That stands in such stark contrast with the lull, the dull, and the ignorance of isolation, of nanny state sterility. There is nothing sterile about creativity. Creativity is alive. It's crackling with energy. It's crackling with life. And what we have on the media and the YouTube and all these platforms is crackling with death. It's not crackling at all. It's just stinks. Because they don't want freedom. They are the people who never learned the time-old lesson that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, that Lord Acton said. They are people who think that somehow the world will be better when they get to censor everybody's opinions. They don't realize that this is the same folly that fascists and tyrants and kings and emperors around history have always tried and always failed, which is to stamp out man's human creativity. But these people will try again like Luddites, ignorant of history that they are. And they'll fail again. They'll build that stupid, flimsy Tower of Babel trying to be God, and it'll crumble over and over and over again. Because they can't just sit back and enjoy the beauty that's all around them and respect the human free will that their neighbor has. They want to stamp it out and control it for their own social status. But they will have no status when their towers of Babel fall. They'll just be babbling to each other in a postmodern, incoherent mess. And you and I will just build what we have to build. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.